It all starts with an urgent alert warning that the city of Liang is suffering a terrible attack. Right then, several projectiles fall from the sky, and chaos takes over as everyone looks for a safe shelter. Then the young man takes a heavy hit and awakens a mysterious power that makes his whole body glow brightly. At the city's main school, the students gather to hear about the important elite class. With that, the instructor explains that the exam has 750 points in total evaluations. He reinforces that only the top 10 students will be able to enter the Dream Special class. At that moment, the protagonist thinks that this is his only chance to become a martial arts master. It turns out that he was in a coma for 2 years, and now he needs to make up for lost time by force. Walking down the hallway, the young man notices that he is being watched by some mean-looking classmates. But a group of bullies stops the dark-haired boy and starts mocking him for coming back after so much time. With a wicked look, the leader of the gang asks if the kid really thinks he is some kind of genius. At that, the hero firmly grabs the jerk's arm and tells him to focus only on his own test. Without paying much attention, he lets go of his rival and goes on his way, leaving everyone there quite surprised. The brute gets annoyed and wonders how that kid got so strong and arrogant all of a sudden, so they decide to wait for the combat test to try to hurt the rookie without facing any punishments. With a bizarre smile, the villain plans to end the opponent's career during the official fight. Back in the classroom, the student starts the written test that asks about the history of the New World. Everything changed in the year 2842 when aliens invaded our Earth. With the nuclear defeat, 5 billion people lost their lives, and humanity was almost completely wiped out. But the radiation made the survivors evolve and reach level 2 of strength in August of 60. Because of that, new super strong warriors emerged and fought bravely for survival. With incredible powers, they faced the invaders and defended what was left of our planet. This event marked the end of the old era and the beginning of the famous superior martial calendar. Right then, the protagonist finishes the test and submits his answers with great speed and confidence. He stays calm because he knows he answered all the test questions correctly with great ease. It is revealed that the young man was not in a coma, but rather in a very strange and mysterious place. But the rewards from that place gave him an incredible and very useful photographic memory. Arriving home, the young man's father calls him to eat together with the rest of his family. But his sister picks up the exam ticket that he dropped on the floor and calls him clumsy. Everyone gathers at the table for dinner, and the atmosphere seems very peaceful and quite pleasant. Then the young man's father shows him a mysterious vial with a smile on his face. The man explains that it is a red vitality powder to increase his score on the martial arts test. With that, the son says he can pass the test without needing any extra help. His father calms him down and tells him not to worry, because the family can easily support him. With a smile on his face, the boy understands his dear old dad's affection and concern. Back in his room, he thinks that the vial cost all the savings of his poor family. Knowing that everything depends on tonight, he prepares himself to train really hard. Right after, the hero enters a cold and desolate place inside his own mind. He mentions that he has always gone to this crystal space when he sleeps ever since his accident. His mission there is to protect a crystal from monsters, and that always leaves him very exhausted. He explains that if the crystal is broken, he falls into a coma for one entire day. But if he gets defeated in battle, he wakes up the next day full of energy and ready for another round. At first, the young man was afraid of falling into a coma, but soon he understood the rule to get stronger. This training made his mental power and memory improve absurdly over time. The system warns that the next wave of monsters will arrive in exactly 30 seconds. At that, a new intense fight begins, and the young man defeats all the creatures with his sword. Exhausted but victorious, the hero opens his panel to check his current power status. Then a notification warns that the fearsome fifth horde of enemies is already on its way. Analyzing his attributes, he thinks he is not strong enough to get into the elite class. Suddenly, a red dragon appears and spits a huge blast of fire in his direction. The protagonist dodges and uses an ability to slice through that creature's claw. The beast strikes back with a tail whip, but the young man manages to dodge it with agility. After being taken down so many times, he has finally mastered the big lizard's attack patterns. With that, the swordsman uses his sword art and lands a strike on the monster's chest. He takes advantage of the opening to climb onto the huge reddish creature's back. To his surprise, the beast goes into a berserk mode, becoming even more dangerous than before. The young man admits his carelessness, but luckily he did not get hurt much by its fury. Facing the giant beast, the warrior prepares for the great decisive showdown. He calms down and confidently says that this time he will surely win the battle. With his body glowing in blue, he charges for the final attack against the dragon. He lunges with his sword drawn and aims right at that huge creature's head. But the monster is fast and tries to bite him, so he uses his speed to escape. With a serious face, the warrior gets ready to use the advantage of his small size. He says that being small has its perks and easily dodges the breath of fire. Then the swordsman uses a powerful technique and dashes in for a very accurate strike. The hit lands perfectly, and the giant creature falls to the ground, kicking up a lot of dust. Then the hero uses his energy to create a shield and defend himself from the beast's impact. Even wounded, the dragon roars and prepares another powerful blast of red flames. With that, the young man counters with a beam of light that hits the beast right in the mouth. The monster is finally defeated, and a message congratulates the young man for beating the horde. With the victory, his agility increases, and he gets ready for the next battles to come. At that, the system informs him that he completed 5 waves and earned a visualization method. The boy remembers that the school teaches a similar method, but only for mental masters. He thinks that the more he fights, the more good items he gets. But a new wave is already approaching. Waking up in his room, he realizes that the new enemies are way too strong for him right now, so he decides to check out the new visualization method he just got as a reward. Upon activating the item, he is transported to a weird space filled with digital water. Inside, the warrior faces a dark and scary creature with multiple eyes. That giant being stares down at him, and its presence is overwhelming and highly intimidating. Then he understands that this is a test, and he just has to look at the monster to be judged. Back in his room, the young man meditates, and a bright blue aura covers his entire body. At that moment, his sister opens the door and calls him to go have dinner with the rest of the family, but she is surprised to see her brother's body, all muscular, and calls him handsome. With a smile on his face, he feels happy with his little sister's sudden compliment. Joking around with her, he asks if he wasn't handsome before and messes up her hair. At that, the girl gets all shy and wonders when her brother got so good looking, already dressed. He thinks that this was an effect of the new method and announces he is leaving for the exam. Then his father says goodbye with a smile and tells his son to be careful on the way. Arriving at the testing site, he enters the gym of Lying City School Number 1. Stretching his body, the hero feels that the visualization method has made him much stronger. With that, the bully approaches and mocks him for being out of school for 2 years. The group of brutes surrounds the dark-haired boy and calls him a philanthropist for helping the weak. Unshaken, he says it is better than someone who didn't even pass the academic tests. The protagonist smiles and says that if his rival didn't hear it right, he can't take the test. He even provokes by saying that he didn't name anyone, so if the shoe fits, wear it. A friend steps in to break up the fight and says that the evaluation is the most important thing right now. Angrily, the villain backs off and tells the boy to wait because he is going to be in big trouble. Worried, the classmate says he is toast, but the hero doesn't seem to care at all. The friend explains that the jerk's uncle is now the new dean of students at the school, and they even say that the dean leaked the test questions to help his nephew, a voice announces that the martial arts exam will have a strength test and then a combat duel. The protagonist calms his friend down and tells him not to worry because the test is about to begin. The first evaluation uses a system where the last place in each group is eliminated on the spot. Thinking about the upcoming duel, the boy decides it is best to save a little energy. His strategy then is to use his speed to win, and a blue aura wraps around his fist. But his rival seems very confident and says he has more than enough strength to pass easily. The first group's evaluation begins, and the two opponents face each other very seriously. Right then, the bully lands a powerful punch on the punching bag with all his might. The hit is so strong that the shock wave throws another student far away from there. The jerk's friends celebrate and say that his strength is almost 1,400 jin. One of the henchmen smiles and says that with the boss in first place, someone is going to be eliminated soon. It is the hero's turn, and he also lands a solid punch on the testing equipment. The instructor is shocked because the rookie scored 1,500 jin with low life intensity. The boy's friend is left open, jawed, and wonders when he became so incredible like that. The teacher analyzes that this strength is abnormal and suspects an advanced martial arts ability. With that, he gets curious and asks his assistant to bring that student's file. Reading the document, the man sees that the boy has an extremely high proficiency, even after the suspension. Back on the court, the hero gets ready and thinks about testing his rival's strength during the afternoon. The second part of the exam will be a combat duel in a large fighting ring. Then the instructor calls the students to the stage, and the first name announced is the protagonist's. The name announced for the match is his rival's, and he smiles with a very evil look at his opponent. At that, the students doubt the hero's victory because they think brute strength doesn't win a martial arts fight. The bully points his spear and warns that the boy's luck has run out and he will be defeated right now. Then the dark-haired boy replies with a calm smile and says he hopes to see all that attitude during the duel. At that moment, the villain starts spinning his weapon, creating a very strong orange energy trail. With that, the protagonist draws his sword and gets ready to block the attack coming his way. He dodges smoothly while his opponent tries to land consecutive strikes with a lot of anger. The brute gets irritated and notices that his target is much faster than in their last fight. Even so, he activates his red aura and swears he will get into the elite class no matter what. Right then, an explosion of sparks happens when the spear and the blade clash with immense violence, but the young warrior cuts through the air with ease and starts to control the pace of that showdown. The jerk yells in fury and charges in with a final strike to try to end this dispute once and for all. He leaps from a huge height and comes down with all his weight to strike his opponent on the ground. Meanwhile, the hero analyzes that fighting against people is quite different from facing monsters. The enemy spins like a hurricane of flames, but the boy stays calm and watches every single move. With a quick dash, the dark-haired boy leaves a blue trail on the ground and closes in for the counterattack. Then a massive clash of energies makes the ring shake and kicks up a huge curtain of dust. Taking advantage of the opening, the swordsman unleashes a slash of light that cuts right through his rival's defense. With the impact, the villain feels the hit and stumbles backward, completely losing his breath for the fight. But a mysterious hand grips a hidden knife, showing that the dirty play is about to start. The hero stares at the instructor while his fallen opponent recovers after the final strike of the match. With a quick motion, the dark-haired boy lands an accurate slap that throws his rival far off the fighting stage. At that, the bully is left lying on the floor, completely knocked out, and without understanding a thing that happened. Then the other students are shocked to see that the underdog of the class won with such ease. At that moment, the medical team takes the loser away on a stretcher, while the next duel is already announced. But the teacher calls the protagonist for a private chat right after the end of that match. The red-haired man observes the young man with a very serious and highly analytical look at that instant. With that, the boy apologizes for not controlling his brute strength while during the martial arts combat. The master reassures him and says that injuries are normal, telling him to get plenty of rest at home. But the instructor notices that the hero won without taking a single scratch due to his pure technique. Walking down the hallway, the young man plans his next steps to get into the dream special class. Arriving in his room, he stares at the virtual combat capsule that all elite students have. He remembers that the equipment allows fighting against digital simulations of other great warriors. With virtual training, it is possible to face opponents of similar levels to gain real experience. Because of the time spent training in the crystal space, the boy is still at the bronze level in the system, so the hero plugs the cable into the outlet, determined to raise his rank as fast as he can today. Right then, the dark-haired boy enters the machine to try to reach the famous list of young geniuses from all over the world. This ranking is globally recognized, and currently, no student from his school is on it. With the capsule closed, the protagonist gets ready to show all of his true martial arts power. Soon the warrior appears in a bluish digital environment, ready for his first big virtual challenge. He decides to start with a warm-up match to test his skills in the virtual capsule. With that, a cute avatar wearing a pig mask appears as his representation in the online game. Holding his sword, the boy wonders where the opponent that the system picked for the fight is. Suddenly, a girl appears behind him and says his reaction was too slow for a warrior. But the young man manages to block the girl's surprise attack with a quick movement of his sword. At that, the girl praises his speed and says that in real fights, you don't wait to attack the enemy. The hero gets annoyed and warns that he won't give another chance for a sneaky attack like that. Then the two begin an intense exchange of blows, and the dark-haired boy uses his blue aura to defend himself. With a quick motion, he uses the pale dragon thrust technique to catch his rival by surprise. The girl is shocked because she recognized the move and asks why he used it like a sword slash. She explains that martial arts shouldn't be bound to specific forms and need more freedom. At that moment, the boy has an epiphany and realizes he doesn't need to follow the technique's rules. But he gets confused, wondering how that girl managed to recognize his secret ability. His opponent takes advantage of his distraction and goes for a new attack with her sharp daggers. The masked boy is startled by her strength and tries to figure out his opponent's fighting style. With a final strike, the girl hits him dead on and says he was careless during the combat. The scoreboard shows the young man's defeat, and he complains that he could have won if it weren't for the surprise attack. Back in the menu, he thinks about the girl's words regarding focusing more on the essence of the martial art. The young man remembers that he still hasn't fully mastered his sword technique and his stealth attribute, so he gets an idea and decides to test this new line of thinking in another virtual fight right now. His new challenge is a giant brute who uses a massive iron ball as a combat weapon. With that, the boy despairs and complains that the system put him against heavily overpowered enemies. Even so, he doesn't give up and dashes forward with his blue aura to trap the big guy with a strike. He believes he has the upper hand because his martial art is stronger than his opponent's. At that, the young man tries another attack, but the man says having a strong technique isn't everything in a fight. The brute then spins his weapon and attacks with full force, but the masked boy seems to have a plan in mind. With a quick move, the hero dodges, and the big guy gets irritated by all that agility. The masked boy faces his rival with confidence and prepares a quick and very precise counterattack. With his breeze in the forest technique, the boy dodges the attack and surprises the enemy with his agility. The opponent is shocked that he vanished, and the hero takes the chance to appear right behind the big guy. The big guy wonders how he disappeared, and at that, the hero uses the pale dragon thrust to win. With the victory, the masked boy uses his pale dragon thrust technique and finishes off his enemy. He celebrates finally using the technique successfully for the first time in a real combat match. Then, the boy reflects on the true meaning of being skilled with a sharp sword. He understands that skill is not limited to forms, and can be hard or soft like a flow of water. The technique can also be fast like thunder or fluid, and calm like a quiet stream. With that, he realizes his ultimate technique wanted to teach him about the versatility of a blade. The swordsman concludes that the sword is an undefined weapon, and its use depends solely on the warrior. Leaving the simulation, the young man realizes he is starving after so much intense training. At that moment, his bracelet glows and notifies him that he has entered the top 10,000 of the Blue Star list. The boy is shocked by the news and can barely believe what just happened. The system shows that he is in first place on the youth list for his city and district. With a confident smile, he celebrates because now his spot in the elite class is guaranteed. The next day, the young man arrives at Leung City's school number 1 very calmly. On the way, he sees several needles scattered on the ground and keeps walking without caring much. A man calls him by his name, complains that he didn't greet him like a good student. The man introduces himself as his rival's uncle and starts scolding the kid right then and there. With a confused look, the boy greets the teacher and wonders who that guy is. His rival's uncle accuses him of not wearing the school uniform properly as the rules demand. A few students laugh at the situation, and the man orders all of them to be quiet immediately. Right then, several students start gossiping and spreading rumors that the hero used performance enhancers to win. The teacher uses a stick to punish the boy and says everything he is wearing is out of regulation. The protagonist is completely clueless and says his clothes follow all the school rules. The man gets angry and tries to strike the young man, but he catches the stick with great ease and firmness. His rival's uncle threatens him with expulsion, but a powerful voice interrupts their fight. The boy holds onto the stick and calmly asks who is looking for him at that moment. Two important men approach, and one of them is the school principal, while the other is the mayor. His rival's uncle rushes to accuse the young man of bad behavior in front of all the students. The principal ignores the mess and looks at the kid with a very friendly and kind smile. Then the principal asks if he is the famous Chen, and the boy confirms his identity right away. The mayor explains that they came to see the kid who placed first on the city's list. Everyone is shocked by the news and realizes that the protagonist didn't need performance enhancers to win. The principal announces that he will be transferred to the Hongji class, and the jealous teacher collapses on the floor. In the meeting room, the top 3 students in the city are introduced to the local leaders. The first is the hero, the second is the rival from Class 1, and the third is the protagonist's classmate. Without really knowing each other, the 3 young men just greet each other with a nod. The mayor starts explaining that the 100 cities in the district will hold a competition among students. Each city will send its top 3 students based on the martial arts, ranking from the night before. The tournament will be hosted in High City and led by a martial artist above level 15. The top 10 finishers will get extra points on their college entrance exams and cash prizes. With a serious look, the mayor asks if they are willing to participate in this grand event. The hero's classmate asks why the competition won't use the school's virtual combat format. The man answers that real combat is more effective, and that there will be protection for the students. The boy analyzes that with his current level and daily training, he can rank among the top 3. The mayor also notes that even without a win, the tournament serves to measure the level of their rivals. With a confident smile, the protagonist raises his hand and confirms his participation in the event. The other 2 students also agree to participate and join the 100 Cities Challenge. The leader celebrates and says that true heroes arise from young warriors like them. Out in the hallway, the dark-haired boy thinks this is his chance to help his family financially. Determined, he swears he will rank among the top 3 in the tournament to change his life. At that moment, He notices the desks don't have names and decides to sit in any empty spot for now. But suddenly, someone yells at him to get lost and asks if the rookie thinks he's worthy of taking that seat. Then a giant student glares down at the boy with a highly intimidating and superior look. With that, the dark-haired boy doesn't back down and stares right back at the big guy, showing he isn't afraid of any provocation. At that point, the hero wonders what era they live in for someone to still try bullying at school. In that instant, the hero's classmate steps in, explaining that the rookie doesn't know the class rules yet. Surprised, the protagonist notices that the other boy approached silently and has an extremely high power level. So, the giant decides to leave the hero alone for now, solely because of his classmate's intervention. With that, the friend explains that in the elite class, the hierarchy is defined by everyone's seat number. He says that the bottom 10 in the monthly ranking have to study standing up for the entire month. At that moment, the boy is impressed by the massive competitive pressure that exists inside this class. But the classmate warns that now, at the beginning of the month, the young man will have to challenge someone to earn his spot. Curious, the protagonist asks if there are other perks besides being able to sit during all the classes, because he thinks the answer will determine how much strength he should use during his next duel. At that, the friend confirms that the higher your ranking, the better the rewards will be for the student. He explains that the position determines the amount of resources the student will receive all month long. So, seeing that there are valuable resources at stake, the dark-haired boy decides it is worth going for the best seat. With that, the instructor announces that class is about to start and orders everyone to go to the combat room right next door. At that moment, the master explains that the challenger can fight 3 times and will earn a number based on his strength. Then the dark-haired boy raises his hand confidently and announces that he wants to challenge the 10th ranked student in the class. The instructor breaks a sweat seeing the challenge and worries about the sheer audacity of the rookie kid. At that, the students gasp in shock, because no one expected such a direct challenge against the top 10. Then the master evaluates that the skills are good, but the boy's vital energy is quite low. With that, the dark-haired boy focuses on the reward and realizes that 10th place gets a lot more resources. At that moment, the young warrior decides the risk is worth the prize and gets ready for the duel. But the giant opponent holds a colossal hammer and mocks his little challenger's courage. He glares at the hero with disgust and wonders if the rookie really knows what he is getting into. The brute laughs out loud and warns that the boy's bad luck started the moment he opened his mouth. With a serious look, the instructor orders the big guy to put his gear on and enter the arena right away. Then the master smiles, thinking this defeat will serve as a bitter lesson for the hero now. Right then, the rival walks to the center of the ring, dragging his heavy weapon with great ease. With both ready, the starting signal rings, and tension takes over the school's entire gym. The villain yells that he is going to make the hero cry and beg for mercy in front of everyone there. But the protagonist activates his blue aura and calmly replies that they will see who falls first. In that instant, the boy watches the reflection of the incoming attack and keeps total focus on the movement. The big guy strikes with full force and says the dark-haired boy's reaction is way too slow for an elite fighter. Then the classmates comment that the skill gap between the two is vast and the end is near. On the other hand, the instructor notices that the hero's life level went up very fast in just a single day. The villain is already celebrating his early victory and yells that the match is over for good for his opponent. But the hammer's impact kicks up dust, and the hero moves with an impressive speed right there. The brute is completely shocked and lets out a cry of surprise upon seeing the dark-haired boy's fast movement. At that, the giant attempts a final blow, but the young man smoothly ducks and prepares his own technique. With a confident smile on his face, the hero realizes the perfect moment for the counterattack has arrived. Then the boy unleashes a blast of blue energy that strikes his opponent's chest with absurd force. With the impact, the big guy is launched into the air and flies several meters away from the ring. The villain lands heavily on the arena floor and is completely knocked out after taking that single attack. At that moment, everyone notices he used the pale dragon thrust with truly incredible mastery. But the instructor grabs the protagonist's arm and asks how he reached level 1 so quickly like that. He stares at the young man with a look of pure astonishment, because evolving that much in one night is almost impossible. With a confused expression, the dark-haired boy points to himself and asks if the master is talking to him. Then the teacher gathers himself and announces out loud that the big winner of the duel is the student Chen. Right then, the crowd of students begins to gossip about how a lower level beat someone so strong. One of the boys comments that he didn't expect to see a late bloomer emerge with such impact at the school. The instructor asks if he wants to continue the challenges, but the hero decides to stop at 10th place today. At that moment, a classmate in a beanie approaches with his phone and asks to add the dark-haired boy on social media. With an awkward smile, the boy accepts the invite while other students also try to make friends. Suddenly, the defeated guy throws himself at the protagonist's feet and begs for forgiveness in a very pathetic way. Meanwhile, the light-haired master watches the kid from afar with a very mysterious thought, but he announces that the student must come to his office right after all the classes end for the day. Once in the office, the hero finds an elegant man sitting there who tells him to come in and make himself right at home. The instructor asks the principal about the special admission spots for the best universities in the country. The man with the mustache tells him to take a seat, and the master explains he wants to give the new student a chance. At that, the principal states that the minimum requirement is having a perfect level 1 martial arts skill, but the teacher insists and tells his boss to test the young man because he has equipment for that. So the principal points to a dummy and asks the boy to use the exact same move from the earlier fight. With a serious expression, the boy focuses and prepares all his power for the test right now. His eyes shine with determination as he channels all his energy for the decisive strike. With that, the young warrior grips his sword and gets ready to show his true strength right there. He uses the pale dragon thrust, and a blast of blue energy shatters the test dummy. The principal is stunned because the rookie achieved the perfect level in just a single night of training. Looking embarrassed, the boy apologizes for breaking the equipment, but he didn't expect to be so strong. Excited, the master yells that the kid is a combat genius and that his instinct is extremely rare. He says he has never seen a student with such a sharp instinct, and the boy gets tense at the compliment. The principal agrees and decides to give him the first place resources for his special training. With a confused look, the protagonist raises his hand and asks what this special admission is. The master explains that to get into the top schools, one needs to have a very high life level. The young man listens closely because he knows his current level is still far from what is needed. But with the special admission, he only needs to reach the perfect level 1 month before the final exam. The boy then asks if he can go to Manhwa University if he passes this admission. The teacher gets confused and doesn't understand why, since the resources at all of them are quite similar. He remembers a tragedy from the past, while lightning brightens the sky of his dark memory. 6 years ago, Westlake City suffered a surprise attack from a terrible race of giants. With that, the local heroes and those from neighboring cities joined forces to fight the imminent threat, but the enemy's strength was massive, and hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives in the battle. With this memory, the young man hopes his family can live in peace and with great safety. He also wishes to get strong enough to be able to protect his city from any major crisis. At that, the instructor realizes the boy is a responsible young man capable of great deeds in the future. The master understands that this kind of mindset usually comes from someone who has already lost everything in life. The principal explains that the special admission will tie him to only one of those two schools. With that, the teacher says that if he does well in the tournament, his spot and score will be guaranteed. With a smile on his face, the boy thanks the principal and the master, saying he will think about it. Leaving the school, he reflects that the 100 Cities tournament is still more than a month away, so the warrior decides to live in a special dorm at the school to focus entirely on his training. He thinks about using medicines to speed up his progress and going to the martial palace of technology. It turns out that there are three great forces protecting humanity, and the extreme martial palace is one of them. Then the second one is the martial palace of technology, which focuses on increasing humanity's strength, and the third is the Martial Artists Alliance, which is responsible for keeping general public order. The young man remembers that the founder of the Technology Palace was a genius who helped humanity a lot. Arriving at the place, he asks to buy 3 boxes of a rare blood and thunder pill. The clerk is left with her mouth wide open because she didn't expect someone so young to buy that item. The attendant warns him that to buy the pill, he must pass endurance test first. She explains that if the user loses focus for 30 minutes, the thunder energy can be fatal. Because of the risk, the young man needs to pass the test, and he places his hand on the machine to start. With a confident look, the boy tells the girl that he is completely ready for the challenge right now. Right then, he starts the test on the machine, and the attendant watches everything with close attention and curiosity. But the equipment breaks down, and the girl is shocked by the sheer endurance of that young man there. So the dark-haired boy leaves the room and calls tech support, letting them know their machine broke again. Back in his room, the warrior reads the instructions and sees that the maximum is 3 pills a day for the effect. He thinks that the store's test was easy, and that the pain was only 50% of a single pill. With that, he decides to take all 3 at once, because he believes he can handle 10 times the pain. But the instant he swallows the meds, an unbearable pain strikes his body and leaves him in shock. At that moment, multiple blue lightning bolts cover the boy, and he screams as he feels every muscle contract forcefully, even breaking a cold sweat. The young man smiles with a defiant look and asks if that is all the pill can do. After a while, the pain finally subsides, and he breathes a sigh of relief for having managed to hold out until the end. A notification alerts him that his life intensity went up, and he celebrates being closer to his goal. But he realizes his body can only handle the pills for 10 days, and his money will only last for 55. Because of this, he understands he needs to place among the top 2 in the tournament to be able to keep going. The pill's side effect leaves him temporarily unable to move due to the surge of energy. Since his physical body is exhausted, he decides to enter the crystal space to train his mind for a bit. But suddenly, someone starts knocking very hard on his bedroom door and interrupts him right away. The next day, the hero thinks that even without beating the giants, his mental power has improved a lot. With that, he sits down and reflects on his training and the arrival of the school's resources. He remembers that the subsidies have finally arrived and that he is eager to start class today. In the classroom, a red-haired teacher announces she will teach an advanced combat method. At that, the boy realizes the instructor's power is above level 15 and is highly impressed. She explains that the higher your martial skill, the harder it is to develop physical strength. Because of that, mental power concentrates all strength into a single point to increase explosive power. This ability to use every drop of strength in the body is known as mental power attachment. But the woman warns them not to focus on that right now, because life intensity is more important. Then the instructor says she will test all the students' mental power and orders them to stand up. She will use a flute to play the song of exhaustion and measure everyone's endurance right there. With a smile, she says the rookie can choose not to participate because it won't affect his grade. The young man is confused, not understanding why she is offering this option only to him at the moment. He figures out that she is underestimating him and with a confident smile, he announces he will join the test. The teacher thinks he is too competitive and that the other students are rookies in this aspect. She decides to keep an eye on him to help. When he fails and gets ready to start playing, with a determined look, the protagonist prepares to resist with all his mental strength. At that, the other students cheer excitedly and get ready to show all their power. The instructor begins playing the Song of Exhaustion, and a purple energy wraps around her entire body. The dark-haired boy listens to the melody calmly and seems completely unaffected by her ability. A dark and giant figure emerges behind the boy and challenges him to an intense mental combat. At that, the hero is surprised but gets ready to fight against the instructor's physical hypnosis. With a powerful kick, he attacks the shadowy figure and recognizes the technique the teacher is using. He smiles confidently and charges at the enemy to show all his power and skill. The woman is shocked to see that not only did he resist, but he can also fight on equal terms. With a serene smile, the young warrior proves that her mental pressure means nothing to him. Impressed, the teacher admits that the boy's mental power is much stronger than she imagined, so she decides to raise the abilities level to test the new student's true limit. Meanwhile, several students collapse on the floor exhausted and unable to get up due to the pressure. The instructor notices that most couldn't handle it, but focuses her attention on the only one still standing. With a curious look, she wonders if the young man will manage to withstand this new power level. The woman is stunned because even with the increased force, the dark-haired boy remains standing without any problem. The classmates gossip that the young man is poor and wouldn't have the means to buy items to train his mental power. At that, the big guy who lost to him celebrates because the hero's strength proves he wasn't weak. The protagonist's classmate stares at his rival, and the two prepare for a mental power clash. The brute falls exhausted to the ground, and the teacher thinks the rookie lasted longer than the top student in class. With a serious look, she decides to test level 8 mental power to see if he can handle the pressure. The boy feels the force increase and starts panting due to the new difficulty level of the test, but his blue aura shines, and he summons his own energy giant to fight the teacher. With that, the two energy giants begin an epic battle with multiple strikes and power explosions. The teacher's energy giant attacks with a heavy punch, and the boy feels the crushing pressure. From the impact, he breaks a cold sweat and realizes he is reaching his maximum endurance limit. Right then, the young man falls to his knees, panting and out of strength to keep fighting that pressure. The instructor is shocked because his mental power affects his body, which is a true miracle. She runs to the principal's office and yells that the rookie has the rare double talent for combat. In the office, the woman confirms firsthand what she saw, and the master smiles, pleased with the news. With his hair standing up from excitement, the principal says the boy has the potential for level 20. He states that a talent like that must go to one of the top 3 martial arts universities in the world. With a determined smile, the instructor salutes and accepts his boss's new mission. Arriving at the office, the dark-haired boy asks why he was called for that conversation with the teacher. The master asks if he knows about the Black Dragon University, and the boy says he knows little about it. Then the man explains that these schools recruit only geniuses who can become flying artists. To do so, you need a life intensity of 9.9 and an intermediate level martial art. He also warns that very few students can afford the medicine to reach all that power. The protagonist listens to everything in silence and thinks carefully about this highly important proposal. He decides to try for the university's selection, but thinks he doesn't want to leave his family behind. Even with a heavy heart, the young man shows a look full of determination to his instructor. The master encourages him and says he can use the other schools as a backup plan for the future. The 100 Cities tournament will take place in 1 month, and he needs to focus on that for now. Arriving home, his sister calls him to have breakfast, and he answers that he is on his way. The girl with cat ears notices that her brother looks completely different from before. She thinks he got more handsome and his aura is much more mysterious and imposing. The young man tells his family he is going to live at the school to focus on his training for the tournament. With that, his mother worries about his health, and his sister finds it weird that he got a dorm right now. The boy calms his mother down and says the school gave him a lot of resources for his training. He explains that students in the elite class get a private martial arts room. At that, his father feels proud and tells him to ask for help if he needs anything. With a smile on his face, the man tells his son to just keep moving forward with determination. The young man finishes eating and announces he is already heading off to school to train hard. Then his family says goodbye and wishes the boy good luck in his new challenge of power. Once at school, he sees the resources and thinks that martial arts is a sport for the rich. The warrior uses his access card to enter his new special training room. With that, he decides that from now on, he will focus entirely on his intensive training. Once inside the room, the boy asks the artificial intelligence system to increase the gravity. Then a training dummy appears, and the system confirms its new master's command. The young man feels the weight on his body and finds it interesting to fight under such extreme conditions. At that moment, a new boxing robot shows up, and the fourth round of practice finally begins. He blocks the strike but realizes he can't take the attack's head on under that gravity. With that, the hero dodges the punch and decides to change his attack's trajectory to win, but the robot analyzes him and suggests he reduce unnecessary movements in order to fight. The robot attacks high and low at the same time, closing off all escape routes for our brave hero. Since he can't dodge, the boy decides to make the mechanical opponent feel the weight of double gravity too. Stepping hard on the floor, he activates the command, and the pressure in the room goes way up at that moment. With that, the young warrior uses his blade to block the impact and counterattack the mechanical enemy. The metal opponent falls to its knees, letting out a lot of smoke, and seems to have finally been defeated. But the machine's eyes glow red, showing that it is going to use its last combat resort. Right then, the robot grabs the dark-haired boy with everything it has, and he gets outraged by this sudden cheating. Pinned to the floor, the hero orders the system to shut down the gravity state so he can breathe. Feeling his body at its limit, the young man decides to use the visualization method to strengthen his mind. Transported to a dark space, the warrior faces the depths of a mysterious red sea. In front of a giant monster, he yells asking for experience points to level up. Back in the real world, a notification warns that his mental power increased while he meditates calmly. Trying to stand up, the boy realizes his leg is totally numb and feels an annoying discomfort. Mentally exhausted, the dark-haired boy notices his physical body hasn't fully recovered from the heavy training yet. With no other choice, the protagonist throws himself on the floor and decides to sleep a little to restore his energy. Opening his eyes shortly after, the boy feels renewed and ready to face a new martial arts challenge. He enters the crystal space once again, determined to refine his combat skills with the sword. Moving his feet with agility, the swordsman positions himself to face the enemies that are appearing. The green fire giants show up, and the hero remembers he couldn't defeat any of them in the past. But this time he grips his weapon firmly and swears he will test his strength against these beasts now. The robot attacks, and the hero realizes its strike is way too heavy to be blocked. With that, the young warrior looks at the mechanical enemy with an air of great surprise. Right then, he understands that the green spots on the beasts are actually pure healing energy, but the boy charges with his sword and decides to focus on destroying those marks first. At that moment, the fighter feels that his body control has improved a lot with the training. Then the dark-haired boy unleashes a precise and fast slash against the giant monster's body right there. With this accurate hit, the creature finally falls defeated and lets out a lot of smoke. With that, the swordsman faces the next rivals and feels ready for the war. In that instant, the young man trains tirelessly, aiming to reach the top of the tournament. Finally, the day of the 100 cities competition arrives, and High City is packed. Entering a luxurious hotel, the boy is impressed by so much beauty and wealth, but he notices a commotion at the front desk and wonders why they won't let the guy in. The brute fighter yells at the receptionist and demands an explanation about the delay. With that, the staff member gets scared, while the villain slams the desk with a lot of anger. At that moment, the hero feels a dangerous aura coming from that dark-haired man. The boy analyzes that the guy's martial level must be almost equal to his own. Suddenly, a beautiful girl with purple hair watches the scene with a very calm look. Then the Princess of the Sea orders them to let the young man sign the check in document. The students comment that the girl is much prettier than in her internet pictures. At that, the friend warns the dark-haired boy to forget about the girl because she is out of his league. His friend explains that the girl is named Jo Xiaogyu and is the famous daughter of the local school's principal. At that moment, the hero remembers that he has seen that face before and recognizes the girl from the virtual combat. He realizes she is the same camper who ambushed him in the game and is surprised by her real beauty. With that, the young man thinks that coming to this 100 cities tournament was truly the right choice. While the tea gets hot on the table, the students gather to hear the new rules of the competition. Then the instructor announces that there will be an extra badge battle stage before the qualifiers. Curious, the protagonist asks about the details of this new rule to understand the challenge better. The master explains that the tournament lasts 3 days, and the first phase will be in a very dangerous forest. In this stage, the youth must capture different types of badges within a 13-hour time limit. After securing the items, they must rush to the finish line to secure their qualification. At that, the hero asks the total number of badges and finds out that only 50 teams will advance. The teacher warns that the second round will be a one-on-one knockout bracket with very little rest. At that moment, his classmates are relieved that they won't have to face the protagonist right away, but the master reinforces that the top 10 get extra points on their college entrance exams and cash prizes. He explains that the champion needs to have endurance and strength to last 3 consecutive days of fighting. With a very serious look, the instructor raises his finger and says he has one last highly important point. He strictly forbids any fatalities because humanity's true enemies are the aliens. At that moment, the leader says everyone will wear special clothes to keep the strength level balanced. The man warns that if he needs to intervene, the student will be eliminated, and he asks everyone to do their best. With that, the trio of students shouts with all their might, confirming they are ready to win the event. The hero stares at the scenery and wonders if what is in front of him is really a dense forest. The organizer introduces himself as the school principal and explains that he is one of the owners of the grand tournament. He shows the location and says that there is a dimensional rift. They're called the spiritual realm. At that, the boy gets thoughtful knowing that this strange place is full of dangerous monsters, but the man guarantees everyone's safety because a very powerful warrior has certified the space. Then he gives a serious warning, letting them know the test carries a risk of life, and everyone must be careful. With that, the leader points to a lone boy and announces that he will have teammates. At that moment, the protagonist observes the dark-haired boy and wonders why he looks so unhappy there. Shortly after, the system performs an iris scan to authorize the competitor's entry. With permission granted, the great gate opens, and the students prepare to enter the woods. Then the group crosses the passageway and finally arrives in the famous forest of the spiritual wolves. The principal explains that he will use a magic circle to bring the kids back in case anything goes wrong. He says that out of 300 points, only 100 of badges, and wishes the competitors good luck. With the warning given, the energy circle begins to glow intensely to activate the transport. Right then, a blinding light covers the entire environment as the students are completely teleported. As soon as the brightness fades, The hero opens his eyes and tries to get used to the new scenery. He observes the giant trees and wonders if that place is really the so-called spiritual realm. In that instant, his teammate checks the digital map and asks which point they should head to next. With a smile, the dark-haired boy spots an item nearby and decides to check if the badge is real. So, the friends agree with the plan and get ready to start the search for the valuable prizes. Arriving at an isolated spot, they find a huge stone pillar in the middle of that dense forest. With that, the hero presses the glowing button on the totem to try to retrieve the first badge of the test. Right then, the dark-haired boy realizes he got lucky and comments to his friends about finding the item so fast. Suddenly, one of the teammates yells for everyone to be careful because he sensed danger coming from the ground. At that moment, several arrows fired by a trap fly toward the group of students, but the boy is surprised to notice that other competitors were even faster than his team. Just then, someone steps on a pressure plate, and the enemy gang approaches with weapons drawn. The team from Kun City appears and demands that the heroes hand over all their badges right now. They explain that the larger cities usually have the strongest warriors in this entire tournament. Meanwhile, in the auditorium, the spectators watch the tense confrontation through giant screens. The rival principal mocks the master from Liang and says he will pay for the losers' tickets back. With a sarcastic smile, the hero asks if the jerk really thinks he can eliminate them all by himself. The villain gets angry and warns that they'd better obey if they don't want to leave the dispute badly hurt. Then the dark-haired boy fires back, saying that the size of the city doesn't define who is the most powerful fighter. The enemy charges with his spear and swears the protagonist group will be the first to fall today. He yells that he will become the king of spears and attacks fiercely to try to overpower the dark-haired young man. At that moment, the teammates get ready to help, but that the atmosphere becomes extremely heavy right there. Very calmly, the boy tells his partners to leave all that mess in his hands. With his blue aura glowing intensely, the warrior announces he will face the rival gang all by himself. In that instant, his friend observes the hero's power and realizes he is going to use a secret technique. The enemy trio leaps with their spears and yells that the hero doesn't know the vastness of the spiritual world, but the gang leader is startled to see that the dark-haired boy blocked the joint attack with great ease right there. At that, the villain grips his weapon's handle tightly and wonders how level 5 can be so brutal. Then the boy analyzes that the opponent is strong, but realizes the other two are much weaker than him. At that moment, the warrior activates his level 9 mental power attachment, and his eyes glow blue. With that, the hero holds his sword firmly and prepares to unleash a single strike against all three. Suddenly, a burst of energy occurs as the swordsman uses his fluid light art to attack. The dark-haired boy uses the first stance of his technique and creates a cage of light that covers the entire battlefield. At that, the opponents are thrown backward, and the gang leader is in shock after taking the hit. But the protagonist steps firmly on the ground and stays calm as he watches his rivals fallen in the forest. The two henchmen are left lying on the floor, and the team boss wonders how his sword is so heavy. Breaking a cold sweat, the villain is terrified and questions how much brute strength that young man really possesses now. So the boy decides to finish the fight and focuses on the strongest enemy to end the dispute once and for all. With the blade pointed at his rival's neck, the dark-haired boy uses the second stance of the golden drums right there. At that moment, the tournament instructor appears and touches the tip of the sword to stop the decisive attack. But the jerk yells that he can still fight and refuses to accept being eliminated by a student from a small city. The man in white points to the villain's torn clothes and confirms he lost the official duel right there. He explains that the hero's attack power reached level 7 and that no one could have blocked that. The master analyzes the protagonist's talent and thinks he is far superior to the other school geniuses. With that, the instructor walks away believing the young man will be an unbeatable force in the entire martial future. Then the rival with spiky hair says goodbye and tells the protagonist he will be waiting for him in the tournament finals. Right then, the defeated opponent gets up and asks the hero's name because he admires his great strength. With a confident smile, the dark-haired boy replies that his name is the first place of the upcoming championship. Back in the auditorium, the spectators see the result of the fight with our brave hero's victory. Then the rival instructor mocks the master from Liang and asks when he wants the ticket back. One leader comments that there are 4 perfect students, but the other corrects him, saying there are only 3. The spectators are confused because Liang's team is already heading to the exit with only 1 badge. The classmates are startled by the dark-haired boy's plan and ask if he is going to face that Wu Zhang right there. The boy explains that with his strength, getting 2 badges would be easy, but he has another goal in mind. With a determined look, the young man reveals that his true plan is to win the whole championship. He explains that he really needs the 1 million prize to help his family live better. The hero holds up 3 fingers and begins to explain his strategy to the friends who are with him. He says the 3 strongest are from other cities, and ambushing one of them now is their best shot. His classmate questions the plan, but the young man says if he doesn't do this, he might not make it to the top 3. He explains the logic of the tournament and how the strongest players do not face each other in the second phase. He suspects the tournament is rigged to favor the hosts from High City in the competition. With a serious look, the boy shows that he is completely decided to go ahead with his risky plan. Then he wonders if he can defeat 3 perfect fighters in just 2 days of the tournament.